The goals that we're trying to do here really is to understand in an initial attack situation and an extended attack situation of wildfire response, what kind of issues do we come up with when we have this kind of a complex initial attack, multi-agencies, right? That's why you're all here. We're going to do this in Grant Creek. If it weren't for the Grant Creek Wildfire Preparedness Task Force, a lot of this would not have been possible. Okay, reaching out to us as MCFPA to say let's do it up here. Let's do something that we can give some information to our Grant Creek citizens to not only just give them a snapshot of what a response might look like, right? But also to help energize the community so they can take steps of their own to harden their community. In our scenario today, we're going to be presented with something that has limited access and egress to our agencies. It touches every agency that's in here and the homeowners who are here as well. Above all, if we don't walk out of here a little more prepared for a future wildfire incident, well, we've really missed the mark. Some of the pre-work that we had was we asked that our agency partners to kind of prepare for the scenario. Every agency that you'll have, every wildland fire agency in the room has run cards. These are pre-packaged run cards for the time of year that we're operating in. Everything on those run cards is available to our IC for order and for mobilization. So we want that protecting agency to be identified at the origin. So when we get a fire at an origin, we find out, well, who's going to be dispatched? Who is the duty officer? Who is the person in charge of making this mobilization decision, right? So right here is we have the protection layer. And so the protection layer up here you see in blue is Missoula City, Missoula Fire Department. And what you see in that kind of a black, deep red, that's Missoula Rural Fire Department. That means that they're responsible for the structure protection within those polygons, okay? And our origin, you can see, is out. It's not on Missoula Rural Fire Department's protection, per se. There's no structures there to protect. So let's see what wildfire agency has protection out there. So what you see here is, you see the yellow is the DNRC protection of that private property that's there. So they've got responsibility for the wildfire, and the departments have the responsibility for the structures. The green is the Forest Service. The Lolo National Forest has protection there. Our fire will certainly threaten that boundary today. We're going to start with this as being called into 911 dispatch.
One of the citizens, or I guess it could possibly even come in from anybody in Missoula that's going to be able to see up Grant Creek. We're going to be able to ask questions as far as the proximity or closeness of structure response, and that's going to be a difference in how if we're going to dispatch out structure. It's going to be more units responding and more structured units versus the type 6s that are going to go out for wildland fires. We're going to do our best to, just get the best location that we can, and that can be hard getting from information from the civilians.
Right.
Oftentimes up in Butler Creek area, we just go to the closest fire agency, which would be city and rural. Chances are we are going to go ahead and just send a unit up there, just to help with traffic control and stuff, especially up in the Grant Creek area.
What's a typical time frame, would you say? Something like this, it's pretty clear, it's evident, a lot of people seeing it.
It's really going to depend on how quickly we can get the best information as far as where we can get it, to go. But typically we are paging out within 2 minutes.
We're looking at July 29th. And a pretty average fire year, so we're going to have warm and dry high pressure building over the area, which will lead to increasing overnight thermal belts and low afternoon humidity levels. It's going to be mostly sunny. The temperature is 80 to 85. We're anticipating cumulus development over the terrain. Whenever it's a way of saying the winds are going to gust, the winds are going to become erratic. We expect those winds in the afternoon. And around 15 miles an hour for exposed area as possible. So certainly spotting is a potential on a day like today. Tonight we expect temperatures dropping into the 50s to 60s. Our humidity recovery is pretty good, which means it could make the fire lie down a bit. Around 30% relative humidity. Grass has a tough time spreading. So that's a happy thought for firefighters over some of the fire area there. We teach students to go up and do home assessments and community assessments. Each of the students would go to each house. If a homeowner was at home, they'd talk to them, shake hands. If they weren't at home, they would do an assessment for the wildfire risk of the primary structure on the property. And they input the information, things like how wide is the driveway? How's the ingress egress? What's the roof made out of? How's the defensible space in and around the house? What does the canopy look like? Where are they on the slope? Are they at the toe of the slope? Are they mid-slope, upper slope? All of these elements go into a database, into a server in Helena, which kicks out the relative risk rating on the primary structure only. There, let's take a look at the fuels treatments. And so what we're going to put up here is some fuels treatments that have been done by Missoula Ranger District and have been done by Bitterroot RC&D. And Rich, if you want to just address what those colors are, what they're looking at there.
Well, the colors in this case have to do with the date of the actual treatment.
So these would be things like, little canopy clearance, ladder fuel, things like that. Now you can see in our planning area there in the red boundary up in Grant Creek, there haven't been any in the last 10 years. And so the cisterns that are up on, if you want to turn that structure layer off, there's tanks, the water tanks feed right from up near Colorado Gulch. Those feed some hydrants that are down, about the only available hydrants that are in the area. Although the task force and the folks up at Grant Creek have identified helicopter dip sites in the creek. They've identified good places for drafting. We can see the large fields that could serve as safety zones, which are absolutely critical in an interagency response. The presence of a safety zone is the determining factor whether or not structures are defensible or non-defensible. That is, can the responders, if they're there, can they stay there as the fire front passes, or do they, by their training, do they need to boogie? So the presence of a safety zone is absolutely immense. But what's going through your mind to get situational awareness, to start getting command and control of just say you and city right now?
Life safety is obviously our first priority, and we don't have any houses here, so at this point life safety isn't necessarily an issue. So we're going to be looking at trying to anchor this thing somewhere and start putting some water on it.
What happens if you encounter a homeowner here? Say you've got a homeowner who may be taking their own action. They're up with a shovel, or they're trying to take their own suppression action.
I'm definitely going to have a quick conversation about safety and about us being there, and that we appreciate the help. But if you might think about your stuff, your family. You might kind of get some things together. If, depending on where this goes, we could definitely be looking at evacuating some of this stuff.
Could you kind of define just generally where your IA resources might be in your mind going, and just what a basic strategy and initial action plan for you as the IC?
Dispatch for this in particular, it's going to be 2 agencies. It's going to be us. We're going to have 2 Type 5s, a water tender, and myself as the battalion chief. And then we're going to get a unit from City Fire Station 4, which is out there by Costco, close to station. And they're probably going to send, I believe, a Type 3 up there for us. So we're all going to head out. And that's a minute and a half of our dispatch. So as I'm pulling out, I'm going to look and see if I see a smoke column that's, not just your typical a fire. I'm probably going to start spooling things up. I'm going to be asking if DNRC's been notified. I'm going to probably make some suggestions that maybe we look at more than just a single engine if they've got the resources. I'm probably going to be asking for some air support, which is going to be our helicopter. I'm going to be asking for some of these things. I'm going to be calling my duty chief to let them know that we've got what looks to be a pretty sizable incident, because we're going to need to start thinking about backfilling. I'm going to be talking to 110, which is the battalion chief at City Fire. He's probably going to come join me because this is going to be a joint venture. So before we ever even, before we're a mile down the road, we typically try to get all these things in motion.
2 helicopters, 2 engines in a helicopter from DNRC. From Missoula, and that's what you got on scene. And you've got your Missoula Rural and your Missoula Fire Department resources.
Yep.
So Missoula Fire Department toned out a Type 2 engine, a Type 3, so that's your 4th engine. You've got a water tender and their battalion chief. From Missoula Rural, you got the 2 Type 5s, like you said, in the water tender, and you. So right now, a lot of ground resources and the helicopter. Anything else you'd consider ordering at this point?
I probably would look at a unit or 2 from Frenchtown. I might tap East Missoula for a Type 5, depending on what I'm seeing. So I'd start thinking about neighboring agencies. As far as ordering airplanes and things like that, I usually defer that. So I'm going to pull in somebody to help me, and that's where that unified command is going to come in. We can start start ordering planes.
How do we do evacuation, warning, and order? Those are the 2 steps here in Missoula County.
As the fire danger gets close to high or very high, the county commissioners sign a proclamation that gives the ability for incident commanders within Missoula County to order evacuation of the public.
As far as evacuations of homes, the sheriff's office representative will get in touch with the IC, whoever's in charge of operations, maybe Ken at the time, and we will come up with a plan. What do you guys recommend? What do you see the fire activity doing? Do we need to start serving yellow cards or red cards? Is it a warning, or is it something that's mandatory that we cannot wait?
How will the traffic and safety be managed throughout the Grant Creek corridor, especially?
Well, evacuation procedures, I think, are extremely important, because, especially in this area here, because you've got a 2-lane road, and I'll talk about vehicles here, evacuating people with the amount of traffic on a 2-lane road, you're going to have issues, and that's going to be very chaotic. We can do our primary checkpoint up towards the actual incident, but we can do a secondary one back down by the interstate, making sure these people have a reason to be up there to begin with. If we're allowing vehicles up there to begin with, we may be able to put postings at the residence, but we may not be able to, depending on what that fire is doing. And worst case, we're going to run through there with our lights on and our siren. And with the information that we put out via social media, reverse 911, it's going to let these people know if you don't have a posting or there hasn't been a fireman or a law enforcement officer that's talked to you, if you hear sirens and you see lights, that means it's time to go. So during fire season, every patrol car, everybody in the agency is assigned basically a booklet that's got all this information in here that we go ahead and we hand out to the residences, what to expect, what they need to do, smart 911. There's different things that they can do to help themselves and be prepared.
I've in some communities where I've been on large fires, I can tell when communities have talked as a community about what to do with pets and livestock. You have a nice field that could be a rally point for to take care of your own. It's one thing that drags people up into evacuated areas and put them into bad situations is going back for a pet. We on the Community Protection Preparedness team want to thank the Grant Creek Task Force for reaching out to us and giving us really a place to put our S215 students to put a fire in where we can get all these agencies in and do a simulation like this for not only a preseason preparedness exercise, which is all very helpful for us, but to really be able to focus our attention on one site. That's not something that is easy to do. And it's not something that we hope we can do just once a year with the capacity that we all have. but to give us an opportunity to take this information to another community as well. Ultimately, as far as the homeowners go in the homes, it's the responsibility of the homeowner for their property. That being said, there's a lot of things we can do together to harden the community and to prepare ourselves for the inevitability that fire visits on any community here in Missoula and in western Montana.